What's up, everyone? This is the All 49ers Roundtable. I'm Grant Cohn. Got All 49ers veteran Maverick Pallack and Jackhammer. Those are the vets. The newcomers are Schuh and So Real Suneil Gaitonde. I feel it's kind of like that show Wildin' Out, where you have like the vets and the newcomers and special guests. We're just going to be wilding out today. I'm talking about the 49ers. The big news yesterday, I thought I was covering a quarterback competition, but I was covering the absence of Jeff Wilson Jr. That's the news. He's big, he's important, and he's going to be out for a while. So let's start with him. Let's go around in an orderly fashion and discuss whether the 49ers should sign another running back or not. Maverick, you start us off.
I think they definitely need to sign another running back. They have Raheem Mostert there, and we saw last year that he's not capable of going the full 16 games. It'd be great if he could in a lead back role because he's very explosive when he's on the field, but we saw a couple injuries took him out. If they got Wayne Gallman as a reserve, and I think he can do a lot of similar things to what Jeff Wilson Jr. has done in the past, but I don't know if he can necessarily take on that co-lead back role this year. And again, Trey Sermon, I think he'll be a great NFL running back, but I think it takes some time to get used to an NFL playbook, and it'll take him time to adjust to Kyle Shanahan's very intense playbook. And so I think they got to go out and find a guy, at least a pass catcher, in my opinion. Duke Johnson, Chris Thompson guy that are familiar with the playbook, be really inexpensive. Injury problems of their own, but I think they'd be good signings for a low price.
I think they've already made all the moves with the understanding that Raheem Mostert and Jeff Wilson Jr. at one point or another were going to get injured. That's why they signed Wayne Gallman and still drafted two running backs as well. So we still have Hasty on the team, who I think could be, a serviceable like depth, fourth or fifth. But I believe, Trey Sermon's going to be the starter. Mostert's going to come in. Gallman are going to come in spot duty. And then we still have, 1, 2, or 3 backs there as reserves that are still, people that either have been with the team or just drafted. So I think I think even with Wilson Jr. down, I think we always knew one of these guys was going to go down. I think the roster is still, stacked as far as the running back position.
I think they need to bring in somebody else. They do need to sign somebody, maybe not somebody that's going to necessarily make the final 53-man roster, but they just need to add some more bodies to that spot to get them through training camp and through the preseason. They always usually do that. So maybe even bringing back Austin Walter. Don't know what his situation is if he signed with somebody else. But, just something similar like that. They just need to have the bodies to get through training camp and get them to the season.
Yeah, Jack, I would agree with that. The idea of bringing in bodies for camp is a necessity. I think you have to bring in somebody for depth. I agree that JaMycal Hasty becomes that fifth on the depth chart. And I believe that the 4 above him are pretty solidified there. When I look at the list of available free agents, it's not pretty. Duke Johnson is a great call, Mav. I think that is, at least you're bringing in a specific skill set with him, a pass catching skill set, so that you can address that. When you look at the rest of the list, it's not pretty. I mean, most of it has been picked over at this point. Gallman really stood out amongst all the others that were there. I would be fine. I know it's sort of a running joke, but I would honestly be fine with bringing in Frank Gore. I think that he is sitting over here on my wall, my other jersey, right? But he is a timeless wonder and would be great for the locker room. I know it's just a pipe dream. I know it won't happen. But when I look at the rest of the list, they're all camp bodies. So I say, yes, bring one in, but don't expect him to make the 53.
Yeah, I think they should bring one in too, because even if you say Trey Sermon is the replacement, he's had injury issues in the past. He didn't play much in 2019. And it seems like Jeff Wilson Jr. did have a specific role on the team. He was the goal line back. He scored the touchdowns. He was the hard runner between the tackles. And I don't know that Duke Johnson replaces that. So I'm looking through the list of free agent running backs, and I have a name that's going to make you roll your eyes. But I wouldn't have been interested in him before this. But without Jeff Wilson Jr., tell me this guy's still a free agent, because on Spot Track he says he is. Todd Gurley? Okay, now let me sell you on Todd Gurley, okay? I know Todd Gurley has no snap left in his legs. I know that. He averaged 3 point. Last 3 years, he went from 4.9 yards per carry to 3.8 to 3.5. It's not good. But He scored 9 touchdowns last year, 12 touchdowns, rushed for 9 touchdowns last year, rushed for 12 touchdowns the year before that, 17 the year before that. He does seem like he could be a goal line back while Jeff Wilson Jr. is out, in case Trey Sermon isn't that. I'm just saying. That meme with the guy holding his hands up, that's me right now. Ty Gurley. That's all I'm saying. Ty Gurley.
My reasoning for Duke Johnson is because Wilson, I think, was probably the best pass catcher on the team. And we saw Mostert, he had that one catch week 1 where he was not out of the backfield, but he caught that ball against Arizona. But they kind of need to fill that Texas route that they had against Arizona. And Gallman hasn't been an extensive pass catcher in his career. Trey Sermon and Elijah Mitchell, I don't know if you can expect much out of the backfield, at least to start for the first couple weeks of the season. And so I think they just need to find that guy because that's what McKinnon was supposed to be when he signed and what he was to a degree last year. And I think they need to find that guy. But the Frank Gore thing, again, if they bring in a guy that can pass block on third down, that's just as valuable. So either way, I'm totally fine with getting a guy that can do that. And Gurley's also a pretty good pass catcher in his career. He's been used out of the backfield a lot with the Rams.
All right, let's move on. This is still kind of the same question, but which running back will take Jeff Wilson's spot in the committee? I mean, I just laid it out. He's the goal line back. Is that Gallman? Is that Sermon? Is that Mitchell? He's also the best receiver out of the backfield. So is it 2 guys who take his spot in the committee? How do you do this?
I'll go ahead, Jack.
I think that spot's going to be taken by Trey Sermon. I really think that's the guy who will probably step up there. He was probably going to be the second guy off either the second guy or the starter, kind of taking that the role that's been vacated by I'm blanking on the name of the guy who nobody liked from last year that came from Atlanta. Coleman. Thank you.
Go Coleman, yeah.
So they kind of need to fill that Coleman role, and I think that's going to be Sermon. And I think at the same time, he's going to also be the guy that you'll see at the goal line. He's the one that makes the most sense for that spot.
Yeah, I think that, we're looking at it a little bit wrong. Like, it's not who's going to replace Jeff Wilson Jr. I think the setup was how the running back core was in 2019. Coleman was the starter. Breida and Mostert would come in and kind of be like on spot duty, home run hitters, things like that. I feel like Sermon is going to go into that Coleman role. We still have Mostert. So it's really like who's going to be like Breida in the hierarchy or whatnot. So could it be Gallman? Could it be, the other rookie? I don't really know, but I think that, those first 2 with Sermon and Mostert are going to be pretty solidified. And, it's just going to be another kind of person that comes in because I think they're going to go back to how the running game was in 2019. And I feel like they already have that set up already on the roster.
That's what I clued in on was the 2019. And I agree that it's sort of the Coleman meat tenderizer role that you need. The guy who's going to take those 8-man fronts and just bruise the other team to the point where now Mostert comes in and hits the home run because they're not tackling quite as hard as they were at the beginning of the game. To me, it's a brilliant strategy and one that worked well, although for Coleman, it produced less than stellar numbers and therefore fan disdain. But I think it was a very conscious choice to run him into those stacked boxes and allow him to get those hard-fought 4-yard runs that don't look pretty, but do matter in the end of the game. For me, I looked up these 2, and it's pretty surprising between Sermon and Gallman. They are similar body types. I mean, very similar when you look at their measurables. Almost identical combine times in the 40, 4.6, neither one a home run hitter. Sermon notably faster in the 10-yard split, right? So hitting that hole. But when I look at the breakdown of Wayne Gallman pre-draft 4 years ago, some of the strengths that they list remind me of Sermon hands down. Has quality burst through the line of scrimmage, hard charging, trusted option on 4th and short, decisive in the red zone. These things, that the strong second effort, uses shoulders as legitimate weapons of force against would-be tacklers. So I think that for me, when you've got Gallman coming in who proved he can do it against NFL caliber competition last year with the Giants when they were stacking the box against him. He starts the year for me in the Coleman position. And then Sermon, much like you saw with the Rams, as the rookie understands pass protection, it grasps more of the playbook. I think you'll start to see Sermon creep into that role to where he owns it when we hit the playoffs, if we hit the playoffs.
Yeah, Gallman, in terms of filling that goal line back role that, Grant, you were touching on, Gallman has 11 career rushing touchdowns, 6 of them last year, all within 5 yards.
Okay.
He has experience as a goal line back.
That's good
I know
to know.
with the Giants last year that they were a pretty limited backfield once Saquon Barkley got hurt. But Gallman was their goal line back last year. He was decently successful, 6 rushing touchdowns. So he could take on that. I'm just more concerned with the pass catching that Wilson brought. And I know he didn't catch a lot of passes, but I thought he was a reliable pass catcher, especially, go back to 2019, that Arizona play. That was a big play. Even last year against Arizona, another big play. Kyle Shanahan relied on him in the pass game, and they don't have that, in my opinion, on the roster because Hasty's just so inexperienced in that role. And the rookies, you don't know. They just hopefully they exceed expectations early on, but you just don't know.
Yeah, Wilson's a hell of a receiver. He can juke people, and he's got long arms and he's got good hands. So yeah, hell of a receiver. I actually think that Trey Sermon will replace that part of. I've seen him in one-on-ones. He's good. You don't see it much at Ohio State, but from what I've seen, he's really a lot like Jeff Wilson Jr. as a receiver. Similar. I don't know that he's like Jeff Wilson Jr. as a runner. Jeff Wilson Jr. goes to a very dark place, to use Kyle Shanahan's terminology. Not everyone does that. He's very special. Like my dad thinks that he's 225 pounds. Has no idea that he's 200 pounds. He's like, he's a big guy, right? I'm like, no, not really. He's about 200 pounds, but he runs like he is. So if you say Gallman could do it, then maybe it could be Gallman and Sermon, the two of them. If not, maybe they should bring in Gurley because Gurley does get touchdowns. And I'm looking at his numbers on Over the Cap, what he's been getting. He got like 3.5 guaranteed last year. Didn't play that well. I don't think he can command much money right now. It's probably why he's still out there because he's probably in disbelief at what the offers are. So when he wants to come around to reality, why don't you come take a non-guaranteed tryout with the 49ers, see how things go. Hasn't he said he wanted to play here? He said that, right? To foreshadow a topic later. He's already said he'd be really excited to play for Kyle Shanahan, right?
Right. Probably. Most likely.
Most likely.
Elijah Mitchell is a guy here, too, that I think we should take a look at. Because if you go back and watch Elijah Mitchell's film from when he was at Louisiana, he ran between the tackles a lot. That was pretty much where they utilized him. So he would fit in that role, I think, as well. As long as they give him a little bit of a crease, I think he could hit those holes. He's actually, I think, has more carries during his time in college than Trey Sermon did.
No question. I'm looking here. Elijah Mitchell had 41 rushing touchdowns in college to Trey Sermon's 26. So, yeah, don't sleep on Elijah Mitchell. I really don't know what to expect from him, but he looks fast and big and good so far. So, it'll be interesting.
How many catches did he accrue?
Mitchell?
Not very many, but he shows really good hands.
That's what I saw
with his hands, and he's able to. I think he averaged over 11 yards a carry reception.
12 over 12. So he had 49 catches, but 12.2 yards per catch. And from what I've seen of him in the off season is basically he's Trey Lance's favorite target right now. Trey Lance is doing a little bit of the check down thing, which is kind of his game. If you watch him at North Dakota State, we said he's a little bit of a game manager with all these explosive traits. He likes Elijah Mitchell, and Elijah Mitchell is an explosive option, so I get it. Elijah Mitchell is someone to watch. I'm going to be talking about him more as I see him more because he could be better than Sermon. Who knows? But speaking of people who have said they would like to play for the 49ers, Julio Jones on their list. We've learned a lot. Seems like the Falcons wanted a 1. They'll settle for a 2. The Niners have a 2. And every team has a need for a guy like Julio Jones, I guess. Also, the cap is going up significantly the next 2 years. The Niners could potentially afford him in a lot of different ways, but is it the right move? Maverick, why don't you go first?
I would definitely trade, as long as they're not asking for a 1, I would seriously consider it. If it's a 3rd-round pick, if that's what it's taking, plus a player, that I would definitely do that. Conditional 2, kind of similar to what the Colts did with Carson Wentz, where it's a conditional 1, conditional 2, depending on how many games he plays. Julio's market is kind of limited due to the fact that he has a high salary cap, and he hasn't really been willing to restructure his contract in years past. I don't know if he'd be willing to restructure if he was traded to a new team. That's up in the air. But if it's just teams that are able to afford them, there are a couple teams that would be competing with the 49ers. But out of them, I think the 49ers probably have one of the best title windows out of those teams. Maybe the Chargers, if you're betting on Justin Herbert taking an even further leap the next year. But if it's a 2 for Julio, that would take this offense to a whole nother level. I know there's concerns because there's not a true slot guy out of the 3 top receivers, but you get a top 5 wide receiver in the NFL when healthy. You get one of the best projectable wide receivers in Brandon Ayuk, and then you get one of the best Swiss Army knives in Deebo Samuel. That makes a dynamic offense that if they play all 16 games, which that's a major if, that's a dynamic offense.
Yeah, and it's 17 games now, so there's even
17,
that one extra game, right? So I think this is a no-brainer. I think people just assume Julio Jones is going to be a huge cap hit, but Jack and I have been kind of on Twitter telling people like, yo, this isn't a ridiculous contract for the amount of player that you're getting in Julio Jones. And as far as like I think it's like, Jack, is like 15 million next year, and then the next 2 seasons are like 11 million, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yes. So it's not that like out of the ballpark for the 49ers. I mean, and I think what you're getting, and when people say, we don't have a true slot, look, I think talent will find a way to play on the field, and Kyle Shanahan will be able to utilize the talent. Julio Jones' best season was with Kyle Shanahan as the offensive coordinator. I think if you could get somebody like that, I go back to in 2019 when the 49ers were able to get Emmanuel Sanders and how much that offense took off with a reliable option like Emmanuel Sanders, to bring in Julio Jones, who is a much better player than Emmanuel Sanders, even though, Sanders is a great player. I just think that with the other weapons that we have, and now with the talent like Trey Lance, who we know could sling the ball, having that there for 3 years under contract, that isn't ridiculous money, I think is a no-brainer. You got to bring them in. And, now we're putting pressure on the secondary of other teams, with the Brandon Ayuk and Julio Jones as the 1 and 2, and then Deebo kind of going in there and playing the Swiss Army knife like Matt put. I think it's an unstoppable combination that the 49ers must get.
Yeah, originally I wasn't for Julio Jones, but then kind of looking through and looking at the contract and seeing some information come out this week where those numbers really aren't that bad. 15 million for a guy of Julio Jones caliber, in 2021, and then 11 million the next 2. That's a pretty good number. And I'd be willing, the 49ers were willing to give up a 3rd and a 4th to bring in Emmanuel Sanders. And Julio Jones is miles ahead of Emmanuel Sanders and what he can bring. So if you give up the 2nd round pick in 2022, and even your comp pick from that you have in 2023 and your 3rd round comp pick, those are 2 picks that, those players those 2 guys that you're going to select there aren't going to give you the same type of play that you're going to get out of Julio Jones. So I think it's a good move. And then kind of to Mav hit on a lot of the points that I had in my article today, but he had also mentioned about that McKinnon role and how the running backs would handle that. I actually think the guy that would be perfect in that McKinnon role is Deebo Samuel. That guy, that's how he's built, and we've seen him lined up in the backfield at times. So I would love to see them use him as their 3rd receiver, slot guy, throw him out there in the regular offense in the 21 personnel every once in a while. I just think between those 3 guys that they have. Back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They have 21 personnel with Deebo at running back and Julio and Ayuk at wide receiver sometimes. Sorry.
Correct. And
I got excited.
Yeah, no, you're right. Yeah, and it's very similar to like what they do with Kahushek, right? They'll be in 21 personnel, but it's really like 22 or whatever, and they line them up all over the place. And they could do the same thing with Deebo Samuel. I just think it would bring so much explosiveness back to the offense. It's really a no-brainer if they can make it happen.
That term just keeps getting used, and it's spot on, is no-brainer. I'm with you guys on that. I think that so I just did a breakdown of this on the Camper Report. Shout out to Ben Camperman. Out to me to have me on his show. And so to me, it's all about, what's the trade compensation got to be and can we fit him on the roster? And the answer is it's reasonable in both respects. When you look at trade compensation, yes, they say that they want a 1st round pick, but the reality is that they're probably going to accept a package that involves a 2nd and something else. So I think that is very reasonable. I agree that packaging the 2022 2nd round pick with either a third or a fourth from the 2023 draft is a very reasonable amount to pay for someone of Julio's caliber. I would go for it, no problem. Fitting him on the roster, it's been mentioned. Right now, it's $15.3 million as his salary for 2021, comes down to 11.5. As of today, we're currently at about $9.5 million in cap space. We get another $1 million when Rich Berg retires after June 1st. So we're at about $10.5 million. There are 4 contracts that you can mess with to get that $5 million pretty easy. Some of them you probably don't want to, like Jimmy G at 26.4, Eric Armstead at 12.5 this year. But Jimmy Ward at 10.94 with 1 year remaining on his deal. If you take this year's salary, convert it to a signing bonus, and then prorate that over the 2 years remaining this year and next, you've now gotten that $5 million that you need. And you've only secured Jimmy Ward for 1 additional year, which I believe the guaranteed money for 1 additional year is warranted. He has stayed healthy the last 2 years. I think that
was very clever.
To reward him with that would be warranted. And then you're pretty much set. You gain an extra $900K when Sanu or whoever that 6th receiver is drops off the roster, off of those top contracts. I think it's very affordable, and I think it changes the entire dynamic of the team.
And you want Trey Lance to work out. You want him to have a successful transition to the NFL. Give him Julio Jones. I mean, that'll help. And also, from what I've seen from him, I'm not saying he's inaccurate, but when he does miss, he tends to miss a little high. There are reasons. He seems to overstride a little bit. It's correctable. But hey, if that's his tendency, it feels like a golfer who's slicing. You know, when he misses, it's high. Give him freaking Julio Jones, 6'4", can go up and get it. I mean, great. I think it would really be he's the perfect wide receiver for every quarterback, but for Trey Lance in particular, it would really be helpful. My only thing is, yeah, okay, he'll cost a 2nd and a 3rd. I think a lot of teams are going to offer that on June 1st. And I don't think the Niners are going to get him unless they significantly outbid some AFC teams for obvious reasons. And I don't know if they will. Like, if they had a first, they could, but they don't. So I ultimately don't think they're going to get him. Like, I more expect like a team like Tennessee to get him, but I think they should, and I think they'll make the best offer they can.
I think Julio Jones plays a role in this too. I think he's one of those players that has enough clout, has been the best player for the Falcons, and if he goes to management and says, "Look, trade me to the Niners," like that's where I want to go. I think they acknowledge that and they do that. And
he hasn't done that yet, though. He hasn't
yet. He hasn't yet, but I think that that there's a list, and then there's who's actually going to offer things for them. And if the 49ers are one of those teams that are at least in the top 3 or whatever as far as offers, I think Julio Jones could help push it over the edge by saying, I want to go here. And I think Atlanta seems like they're doing right by Julio to even, be willing to trade him, knowing that he still has a lot left in the tank.
All right, let's move on. That's enough Julio for today. You got to do a little Julio every day, but then that's enough. Otherwise, you over Julio, you OJ. So
there it goes, Grant. I've been waiting for it, my man.
Which 49ers rookie will have a standout year this year? If it's only one, who's it going to be and why? Rob, you start.
All right, for me, it is Aaron Banks. I just cannot wait to see that big man out in space demolishing fools. I just want to see him on the second level, all 330 pounds of him moving at light speed, just take somebody out. I mean, that to me will be thrilling to watch, and it will change the dynamic of the offense. I think that we have historically underneath Shanahan struggled in the red zone. I think that for Kyle, unfortunately, that's a trend that goes beyond the 49ers.
That's true.
Bringing in, and it makes sense if you look at historically, they're working with undersized linemen because that fits the zone scheme. It allows them to get out into space. And these big men that can move with that level of quickness, but hit with that ferociousness, to me, it is the type of skill set that comes through immediately. Brute force. I don't care if you're a rookie or a 10-year NFL vet. Brute force wins in the NFL. It's something that doesn't take skill. It just requires you to maul the dude in front of you. So I can't wait to see him do that.
That's a good answer. That's very good. I'll give you 3 points, like an around the horn. Ding, ding, ding. 3.
You did look like
4.
Funny Reality too.
Extra one, yeah. Jack, you're up. Don't get muted.
No, I like the thought of Aaron Banks as well, but since he's been taken, I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to go with Trey Sermon. He was my other guy that I really liked out of this draft. So, I was really excited when that pick came in.
Hey, you're free to repeat answers if you want. We don't have to pick every single rookie, but no, Trey Sermon's that was going to be my answer. So go ahead.
Yeah. So no, I'm looking forward to watching how he carries the ball and watching him finish off some games. I think it's going to be fun to watch.
I was gonna go with Aaron Banks first, and then if somebody took Aaron Banks, I was gonna go Trey Sermon. So let's keep going in order. I'm gonna go with Ambry Thomas because he was the next draft pick. So no, I'm just kidding.
That was Maverick's guy. You can see it.
No, I'm also gonna go with Trey. I'm also going to go with Trey Sermon because I've been on the whole 49ers were going to take a running back in the top 3 draft picks. So they did, and it's Trey Sermon, and I really think that he's going to play a huge role in this offense. He's going to be the safety valve for whether it be Jimmy G or Trey Lance, whoever's starting. I think with that bulked up offensive line, like Rob was talking about with Banks and Mack at center, I think is going to be a great combination for Trey Sermon. And I've seen Trey Sermon carry Ohio State when they didn't have good quarterback play. They didn't have, good offensive line play. They needed somebody to will them into victory. And Trey Sermon basically put the whole offense on his back and take that. He's not going to need to do as much with all the talent on the 49ers, but still having that ability with less responsibility means that, the sky's the limit for what he can do. I think, I'm higher on him than Mav is. Mav's kind of like wondering whether or not they're going to come out. I think he's going to be somebody that lights the offense on fire from day one. Everything Grant's been saying as far as seeing him on the practice field has not changed that for me. It's just shown even more confidence that he's going to be the guy. And I think he's going to be a great asset and be a standout for the offense.
I totally agree with Banks, but if my other option was Ambry Thomas, just because I think out of necessity he's going to be a standout, because I think he's going to be the third string corner this year. He'll be the first off the field. I think if Verrett or Emmanuel Mosley get hurt, and we've seen, hopefully for those guys' sakes they don't get injured, but we've seen them both struggle with injuries in their career so far, and they need that third corner. And if Ambry Thomas can do it, and I liked what I saw from Ambry Thomas watching him at Michigan, and I think he'll be able to provide a lot of depth, especially in that dime fourth corner role if that's a job he wins at a training camp. And I think he has a knack for finding the football, and that's a big thing that the Niners haven't always had on the outside. And also, I think he can provide, if they give him a chance in the return game, I think he can do some damage in there as well.
I thought you guys gave all fantastic answers backed with evidence and thought and reasoning. You did a great job, but what I didn't hear the entire time was the word Lance. I didn't hear anyone say Lance, man. That's their guy. And the fact that none of you even alluded to him is interesting. I think it's fair too. You know what? After watching him just twice, I'm starting to think that maybe he won't have a standout rookie year. That maybe it's fair to be like, man, he's 21. He didn't play last year. He's coming from North Dakota State. Let's pump the brakes there. I think some people thought, hey, well, look what Kyle did with RG3. Look at that. This guy could be the rookie of the year. Like, whoa, hold on. He could be great, but I don't know if he's going to be the rookie. I don't know if he's even going to be the starter. So I think what you guys have said is right on. And the only other guy we'll throw in there is Elijah Mitchell. This guy could be right in there in the mix with every other running back there. Honestly, he could average more yards per carry than Trey Sermon. Who knows? He could be the goal line back. Who knows? So I'm not going to say Lance either. We're all not saying Lance. Rob.
I would argue that he will have a higher yard per carry average over Sermon. When I watch his highlights, he is a home run hitter. When I saw his highlights and then imagine that in Kyle's offense on draft day 3, I was like, hello, good night. I'm out. That's all I need to see. That was the way to end the draft.
Yeah. Bingo. Real quick. Oh, what you guys say?
No, I was just going to say, I think that most of us that were kind of realistic about Trey Lance, always knew, especially in Kyle Shanahan's offense, it's not going to be something that just overnight opens up where we become a pass-first team. You saw 50% of the draft picks that Kyle Shanahan and the 49ers took this year were geared towards that run game.
True.
Two offensive linemen, 2 running backs. This is going to be a run-first team. Whether it be Jimmy G or Trey Lance, they're not going to put up Patrick Mahomes numbers. They're going to be a manage first, don't make mistakes, and use your opportunities to make that big play. So that's just not conducive to an MVP type season for a quarterback.
Good point. I got a bonus topic for you. Lee Ving has put in a very interesting topic. Let's roll with it. You guys aren't prepared for it, but I'll give you the context. Here it is. Grant's Alex Smith clip tweet. I don't know if you saw it. I asked Kyle Shanahan yesterday about the mechanics of Trey Lance's high misses, and he kind of blew it off and was like, "Man, I don't overanalyze this stuff. I just watch where the ball's going. I try to make sure their feet are in the right position, but you're making too much out of it." And okay, it just happens that Alex Smith goes on Colin Cowherd today, talks about this very topic and how Andy Reid talks about it. And it's like, well, let's talk about why you missed high, and let's look at your feet. Maybe you're a little too spread out. What do you make of basically Kyle's answer? Was he just trying to be like, get at me, or is he really like a non-teacher in this aspect? Like, I thought it was a little concerning. What did you guys think of what he said in comparison to what Alex Smith says Andy Reid would say in the same situation?
I haven't seen that yet, but I'm going to check it out. But what I would say is that's the second time that Shanahan's been asked that kind of a question similar to that, and he's answered it the same way both times, because I believe it was right after the draft. They talked to him about helping Lance with his mechanics and things like that, and he said, "Well, that's really done before they get to us. When they get here, about the only thing we really work on is the footwork and making sure their feet are in the proper place and those kind of things."
And they're going the right spot with the ball.
Yeah. Yep, I don't think he was blowing you off. I think he was given the same answer that he's given before.
I agree.
I think that's his approach to it, which I don't necessarily agree with. I think that's a position that you need to be coaching all the time, not necessarily on every throw, but there has to be discussions on mechanics when he comes off. When Jimmy Garoppolo goes in, the quarterback coach, there needs to be somebody that's talking to them about what they're doing, because they should be able to analyze it right there on the spot and help them so that the next time they step in, they're doing better. Because otherwise, practice, you always hear the saying, right? Practice makes perfect, but that's not right. Practice makes perfect. If you're not practicing it properly, doesn't make you better. Right. So I think
bad habits at that point. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right one time, not wrong 10 times. I'm sorry, Jack. You're doing great.
No, you're right. No, that's exactly where I was going though. I mean, if it's happening in practice, you can't. Why are you going to waste three days of OTAs on bad mechanics and then send them off and then wait till he comes back? That just doesn't make sense to me.
And it's very simple. I'm just going to jump in real quick, but if you think about the mechanics of throwing, missing high or low, if you overstride, you want your release point to be out in front of you. If you can visualize it, you want your release point to be out here. And if you're overstriding, you're going to release up by your ear, and that means you're going to miss high. I mean, that's what Andy Reid is talking about. Just don't stride so much. And with a guy like Trey Lance, you have a really strong arm. You don't have to stride so much. I'm sorry, who's next? I get excited.
I like it. I love the passion, Grant. When we get passion out of you, we got a good topic. But so I'm one of the biggest Kyle Shanahan fans. I'm true. No slander against Shanahan, right?
That's true.
But the one critique that I think is valid is when it comes to like specifics about quarterbacks, you don't necessarily see a huge increase in like accuracy percentage and mechanics went under Kyle Shanahan. And the reason for that is I don't think he fixes quarterbacks through mechanics. I think he fixes them through scheme. So how he's going to make a quarterback better is scheming plays where they have a larger window of error, meaning that the receivers are going to be more open. It's going to be an easier read. It's going to be something where they don't have to be perfect to get the job done. Because whether it be Jimmy G, whether it be any other quarterback that we've seen, you haven't seen these huge strides as far as like their weaknesses becoming strengths. But what you have seen is like opportunities for them to look good because the scheming is just on point. And I feel like that's kind of his mentality, and he kind of leaves it up to the quarterback coaches to fix like the mechanics and things like that. So
Okay, good call. Good call.
Yeah, I think in answer to your question, Grant, it's definitely both in my mind. I don't think Kyle's going to pass up an opportunity to take a shot at you. I think that we can all agree on. But
I appreciate that.
I also
Thank you,
think that EQ and the way in which Kyle interacts with other human beings is the biggest question mark I have about him. I also am a Kyle Shanahan fan. There is no coach in the NFL I would rather have as the head of the 49ers. However, I have seen what he did to Jimmy's confidence. I saw a different Jimmy this year, and I'm hoping that carries through. Just in that one press conference,
You saw it, right? It was like, he's back.
Confidence is back.
Yeah.
I mean, he's still nervous on camera. He still doesn't get the fact that he's an Adonis. Like, I mean, he just doesn't realize how physically attractive he is, and therefore how much we forgive him for whatever he says or does.
It's true.
But I think that, it certainly, I hope that the Rich Scangrello rehire brings us back to a point where you have some sort of a filter between Kyle and the guy that Kyle is coaching. I think there are very few human beings out there that can take the type of direct feedback that I think Kyle likes to give to people. I think he can coach a very select number of people. Could be that Trey is one of those. I'm not sure yet, but to me, it is about that interaction, that EQ, that inability to realize that what you say may devastate another human being. Look at Dante Pettis and the relationship between he and Kyle. That was hard to watch from a human standpoint. So that's my biggest concern. That's a big trend for me, the EQ concept versus IQ with Kyle, and something that's been rolling around in my head that I really want to do an in-depth piece on because I think it's an area of weakness for him.
Maverick, have you gone yet?
No, but I haven't seen the clip, but I just know that Colin Cowherd has Trey Lance's best interests in mind. So I'm glad that that's there and it's ready. But I think that I know perfect practice is what you want, but it's the first couple days. So
True.
I just want to reserve making a comment until, if it's still if it's week 2 of preseason and Kyle's still not fixing anything in mechanics, that's a little more concerning in my opinion. But first week, it might just be something as simple as like you said, developing chemistry with Elijah Mitchell. That's big. And developing chemistry with Sermon or Brandon Ayuk or whatever, or Lance. I think that's just as important right now. And if he has to focus on his footwork, and maybe that's just the thing Kyle values more. And I don't coach quarterbacks, but I'm fine with it for now. But if it goes to week 2 of the preseason and Trey Lance is still having bad mechanics and Kyle's admitting it's bad mechanics, that's a little weird to me.
Okay, let me tell you more about this clip because not all of you guys saw it. There was more that Alex Smith said. He said, what you don't understand about Andy Reid is he's essentially a teacher at heart. What he does best is teach. Even though he's known as like a play designer and he's an evil genius, he's really good at teaching. He's like, he can teach offensive tackle technique, guard technique, center technique, quarterback technique, tight end technique. And if you look at his background, he was an offensive line coach for the Packers, assistant offensive line and tight ends. Then he moved to quarterbacks coach. I mean, he really has all this background. And what I've heard about Sean Payton, same way. He can coach defense. So he can coach every single position on the team. And that's just their background. It's experience matters. Teaching matters. And now I look at Kyle Shanahan. What's his background? He played wide receiver. He was a wide receivers coach at Houston. He was a quarterback coach for 1 year in 2007. And then he's been an offensive coordinator. So, I mean, he really doesn't have the background that Andy Reid has to talk about biomechanics of throwing, or that Tom House, he doesn't have the background. And you look at Rich Scangarello, man, dude was a quarterbacks coach for 2 years with the Niners, and then he was a quarterbacks coach for 2 years at Idaho in 2002 and 2003. I'm guessing he's not really an expert on throwing biomechanics either. So I think Kyle's just being honest. It's really not something that this organization specializes in, and that's why they need to outsource it to the dude in LA at USC. Tom House, he's right there. It's not that hard. It's where Tom Brady goes. But, yeah, it's not something the Niners specialize in. But when you said, Suneil, they can get guys open and they can give them receivers. But if you're missing way over the top, it's like doesn't matter, man. So you got to figure that out. Yeah.
And it's not like Alex Smith didn't pick one of the best coaches of quarterbacks ever
the
in the
best.
history of the NFL.
For sure.
You know what I mean? So like,
he's like,
it's like
I just have an appreciation because no one's like him.
sure,
Hey, Kyle, you want to be like the best? Go see what Andy Reid does.
Sure, but then Kyle's strengths also are there that Andy Reid might not have. You know what I mean?
True,
So
true. Good call. Hey, that was a good question and a good discussion. That was a good discussion.
Let's not do too much piling on right now, Grant.
Just to interject here, it was magnificent to see Alex in that interview. God, I miss that guy. He's phenomenal. So likable.
Tony Romo can be play-by-play. Well, Alex Smith could be like a guy on, Colin Cowherd.
Yeah.
Him and Joe Staley, they're both fantastic. Brian Tate, real quick, says maybe Niners need a mechanic specialist to their coaching staff. I would think so. I mean, you just drafted Trey Lance. Everyone knows the thing with him is mechanics. He'll say it. His coaches will say it. I would think it's pretty important to get someone in who specializes, or just have, Tom House on a retainer. Like, hey, we're going to pay you $3 million ahead of time, and anytime he needs to come down, you give him your full attention. One way or another. I mean, they always praise Jed York for giving him private planes and stuff. Like, this is the money you need to be spending. All right, we're getting up on about 45 minutes, so let's hit this topic briskly. Well, not too briskly. The 2022 cap hasn't been set, but the ceiling is $208.2 million, which would be a 14% increase from this year. It's 182. That's a big deal. Usually it doesn't go up more than 10%. So it looks like the league is bouncing back more than expected. Good old US of A, good old NFL. How does this impact the 49ers future? Maverick, I want you to tell me the answer.
I think it helps because $208 million, like you said, a lot more than it is this year. And plus, as long as Trey Lance takes that leap that I think everyone's hoping he does, where he would be the starter, not this season, but the next season for sure, then that frees up the money that you would be creating by moving on from Jimmy Garoppolo. And that's a lot of money. You can make a lot of moves with that if you lock up Fred Warner this year, or you don't, and you get the salary cap this year rolling over in the event you don't trade for Julio Jones. You get even more money in that way, and then you can lock up Fred Warner, save some more money, front load some contracts to create money in 2023 when you got to lock up your boy Nick Bosa if they don't trade him.
Ross Dwelly, him too.
Yeah.
Who's next? Yeah.
I'll go next. I actually think this hurts the 49ers. And the reason why is our strength is Parag. Parag is the cap genius. So when the caps are lower, it makes you have to have one of those guys on a calculator that could really fit in how to get the most out of your cap. When the cap is really high, that just means teams can outbid when it comes to talent and free agency. And 49ers aren't going to outbid people unless it makes sense. You know what I mean? So like, they're not going to
taxes come down in California dramatically
exactly
in the next couple of years.
I think this next offseason, especially with a lot of the players going into free agency, we're going to lose guys. Like, we're not going to be able to retain everybody because other teams are going to overpay them, and we're just going to get used to that because with extra money, there's always going to be a team that's going to overpay a player, and so I think that's where the harm comes. But then Parag is a genius, so he'll figure out a way. But overall, I would say it's probably a negative effect on the Niners as far as retaining talent and maybe even getting like other talent onto the team.
It's a compelling take. I wasn't expecting it.
Yeah, I kind of go fall in between both Suneil and Mav on this one. I think there's some pros and cons to it. I think the 49ers and pretty much the NFL, the teams knew that the scout salary cap was going to be going in this direction for 2022. So they weren't really caught off guard by this. I think that's also why you saw the 49ers for 2021 being able to bring back some of these guys that, had options to go elsewhere that on bigger deals for multiple years, but chose to come back to the 49ers on a one-year deal because they know that they're going to be able to cash in next year. So I think a lot of the players that the 49ers might lose are going to be the older guys that you kind of want them to lose anyway. But this money is going to be able to go towards keeping Nick Bosa, keeping Fred Warner, and some of these other contracts that are going to be coming up that they're going to need to re-sign guys, even guys like Dre Greenlaw and stuff like that. So I think it's going to help them out, keeping their own, Ross Dwelly, keeping their own guys and hey, Julio Jones, bring him on in. $11 million. We just got an extra 26. Now it's only 14.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. But go ahead, Rob.
Yeah, I think that we are positioned pretty well. Although it is, when you look at it, it looks rough. So 194 million is the current liabilities that the Niners have on the books, and that's only for about 35 players. So of 208 million, 194 for 35 doesn't look great. But then you obviously have to consider that Jimmy Garoppolo's salary is still on there. That's 27 million. It's only 1.4 million in dead money when you trade or release him, and so you're getting back 25.5 million.
Richburg will also be off it eventually. I don't know if you're looking at that one. Maybe they can eventually get rid of D Ford eventually, or is he a Niner for life?
I think that's
all
all dead money from here on out.
Okay,
we have redone that contract enough to where all we have left is to hope that he can play. Otherwise, it's all dead money.
He's like Bobby Bonilla for them.
Yeah. Oh, he's still getting paid, right?
Oh yeah. God,
for like 20 more years.
I'm sorry, I keep interrupting you. I'm the worst. Keep going.
The worst. I mean, if I could
so
get
bad.
on a
I'm so
different
sorry.
show, I would. But this is the only option I have. So.
Did you see me and you in the Uber car? Did you see it?
Yes.
Oh man,
That's phenomenal.
Yes. All right, keep going.
Phenomenal. So yeah, I think that it sets up nicely. The other thing that I think is very important that not many people are keyed into, but I think Adam Schefter pointed it out. 2023 is going to be an explosion in the cap. So what that means is you actually want to get all your free agent, if you're a team, you want to get all your free agent deals done in 2022, because in 2023, those deals for free agents are going to be atrocious. Think 2016 NBA.
Right. Yes.
There's some unbelievable deals that just ended. Guys getting 4 years, 80 mil that were just contributors on the bench. I mean, it was ugly. And that's what
you think
you're
about
going to
how
see.
expensive a Ross Dwelley is going to be in 2023. Lock him up in 2022.
Lock him up.
A Ross Dwelley. A Ross Dwelley. Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah,
Well,
it makes sense.
There's only one Ross Dwelley.
And who's due for a big pay increase in 2023? Is it Nicholas?
Nicholas Bosa?
Well,
Yeah.
hey man, if he stays healthy the next 2 years, pay him, I guess. But I mean, he'll have to prove it.
We're set up to have a bunch of these one-year deals expire in 2022 and then get multiple year deals done and avoid the 2023 catastrophe and just use that windfall to re-sign our own guys we know to be proven.
You guys get great answers. I don't have nothing to add other than trade for Julio.
Sign Ross Dwelley.
Yeah, sign Ross Dwelley. Bingo. Yeah, that's it. Almighty Juju says, when will OTA be available to the media again? A week from today? Next Wednesday. I'll be there. I'll give you the full report. Good question. All right. Final question is kind of a bonus question. We got to go quick because I got to eat dinner before after dark, and I got to post Maverick, and I got to I don't have a dog to walk, but I would. Something I've noticed when it's free agent time, like not people aren't just like knocking down the Diners door. Like, I definitely want to sign in Santa Clara, but it's when a player's disgruntled, when he wants out, he always lists the Niners. Just, I would really, really love to see what they got going on over there. What is that phenomenon?
So
is it just the Kyle Shanahan phenomenon? Is it 2 words?
Well, I think there's a yes is the first answer, and second, there's a difference between somebody who's getting traded and somebody who's in free agency. So in free agency, you're looking to get paid the most that you could get paid, right? And so oftentimes that's not going to be where the 49ers are, because most positions are already kind of set with the 49ers. But then when you're in a trade type of scenario, you're going to a team that you feel like is going to be the best fit, that's going to help you win, and that's going to be able to maximize you. And I think when you look at the 49ers and you look at Kyle Shanahan and you look at the coaching that they have around them, that's where players believe that they're going to be able to find that, right? So whether it was, even back when I'm blanking on the New York to Cleveland, wide receiver,
Beckham. OBJ.
OBJ back then wanted to go to, go to the 49ers. Tom Brady wanted to play for the 49ers. Aaron Rodgers had 49ers on his list. Julio has 49ers on his list. So it's like the community that's built here, the way the players talk about the coaching staff, the culture, there's a big positive that's in the 49ers. And I think players want to come, play there.
And like
Jack
that,
got bored. Jack was like, "Nah, this one's
gone."
That's so good.
Kaiser
like
Sose. Oh, he's back. He's back.
My answer blew him away.
I thought you pulled a
that
Kaiser
was-
Sose on us, man.
That was good though.
Disappeared in the night.
to tee up on that, Suneil, when you mentioned the idea of the free agents not coming here, that is a key observation, that the 49ers aren't in the running for generally paying people the most. So when you have free agents that have options, they're not listing the 49ers as a destination because they're looking to cash in. When you have these players who are demanding trades but already have good existing contracts in place, now they're looking for, where do I want to play, with all other factors out of the equation. And the answer is Kyle Shanahan, Kyle Shanahan, Kyle Shanahan. That's just the reality of the aura that he brings to the table. I think when you're going to take the same contract, regardless of where you end up, you want a team that can compete and you want a coach that has it. And Kyle has it.
Yeah.
Well, that's why I originally left, and left was because I saw this question. I was like, have you not been to Santa Clara? I mean, has anybody not been to Santa Clara in this group? I mean, who would not want to come to Santa Clara?
Let me say the things that Santa Clara has. It's got In-N-Out Burger. It's got and Five Guys. You can take your pick. Take your pick. Also, Chick-fil-A.
And a whole lot of Indians.
Hey.
Well, that's like yesterday in Kyle Shanahan's press conference. We started a drinking game every time he said Five Guys. We had to take a drink, and we were by the end of that press conference. It was pretty rough, just by the end of the quarterback portion of it. Yeah, but I think really the reason that so many people want to come, or the guys that are getting traded want to come to the 49ers, I think it's pretty simple. The 49ers were just in the Super Bowl 2 years ago, and I think that they see the mix, and I think they have a good chance of getting back, and that's why they want to come here and play for Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch. John Lynch is a heck of a guy too.
Real quick, there's like two people in the comment section who are like really having a fight. Am I going to have to put you two on timeout? Because there is a timeout function. Don't make me do this. I know both of you. You're like, one's 45 and the other's 50. I really shouldn't have to put you two on timeout.
Tee 'em up.
Come on, man.
Tee 'em
I
up.
can't believe it. I don't want to have to do it to you guys. You guys are both older than me. Come on. No fighting in the comment section. I forbid it. How come every player – Maverick, did you answer this one yet?
I have not.
Okay.
I think it's like they were saying, Kyle Shanahan, California is a nice area. There's also a big history about the 49ers, similar to NBA, of players wanting to go play for the Lakers, even though there's a high income tax there in California still. And you want to play for the successful teams. You want to win with a team that has the expectations of always winning. If you are in that trade scenario, like Julio Jones is, like Aaron Rodgers is, all those guys that want to be traded to a team that has a winning background, where it is not a successful season if you go 6-10 like the 49ers did last season. It was successful in 2019 when they were 10 minutes away from winning a Super Bowl. That was the lowest of successful that the 49ers fans expect. And I think that's a big thing for players that want to win and are chasing the ring, is a team that's like that. 49ers, Steelers, what the Seahawks are now. They might not have the 50 years of history, but the current history, the Patriots, those teams, those are teams that you consistently see named in all those.
Nobody's trying to go to the Seahawks. Come on, Mav.
A lot of players are.
Mo Adams seemed happy to go there, but Chris Royal says Shanahan's offense maximizes players' abilities. That's why they all want to come. LOL. Yeah, on offense, but there's also defensive players that want to come. Look, you guys all just gave Kyle Shanahan a lot of praise, and he definitely doesn't get praised very much, so I'm glad he got some today. But I want to give someone else some praise. I think Kyle's a huge part, probably the biggest part. But Freudian slip. I've covered this team for 10 years, and they've also had a lot of problems with players in terms of the integrity of the front office and ownership. They've had a bad reputation, and John Lynch has stepped in and really created a buffer between players and Parag and Jed and all of that, and given some integrity. Like, hey, if we say something, or if we say XYZ to you, it means XYZ. I'm John Lynch. You can trust me. And I think players respect him too. It may not be on the same level of Kyle, but I think he's brought a level of integrity to the franchise that it freaking needed. So yeah, John Lynch too. Let's give him a little shout out to John Lynch, Big JL. Good stuff. We see you out here.
So he understands what they're going through. I think I totally agree with you. That's a big thing that they want. Is John Lynch was a veteran bouncing around teams at the end of his career too, when he went to New England at the end, and so he totally gets it.
Absolutely. All right, that's the end of our show. I think it was a hell of a show. You guys were killed it. We had a lot of good stuff to talk about, and I was fantastic as always. Thank you guys. Even the two who got in a fight. I mean, it's just a passion. It's what happens at the Roundtable, man. People get worked up. Things happen. Things get said, but I think they're going to shake it off like at the end of a hockey game. You know what I mean? They punch each other in the face, and then you say, hey, good punch, man. I appreciate it. So thank you, guys. I'm going to go scarf down some food or take it, whatever. Publish Maverick's article if I can. If not, I'll publish. I'm not going to publish anything, but Maverick's article is good and published tonight. I guarantee that. And show's over now. So thank you very much, everyone. I never know how to finish these shows. There's been a lot of fun.